Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's finally reviewing part of the Seasons project by Weezer with their EP, their album, Autumn. Now, I've been listening to this, the last week. As always, I listen to it in a lot of different places. I listen to it at the gym, on headphones. I listen to it, I see if it can pass the kitchen test, which is in my house with my family. And the thing is, my family's, they're critical. We all went to the Hella Mega tour. We really enjoyed Weezer's set. We listened to Weezer, especially OK Human, quite a bit. But they just tore this apart. My wife was like, this sounds like a musical. Independently, my daughter tore it to shreds saying, what is this, a Josh Gad album? No, even worse. She said, is this an Olaf album? Like, there's something about Rivers Cuomo's voice on this. So that's this beginning oof. And I'm just going to throw out those criticisms. I'm going to come back to them later. This is a positive review channel, so if I don't like it, I'm not going to review it. I do like this album. But what I like about it is part of what I think makes Weezer such a fascinating band and such a challenging band as well. They're a band where everybody has an idea of what Weezer is. And as long as that idea is rigid, that fan is going to be disappointed. So the people who think they know what Weezer is because of the Blue Album are disappointed by Pinkerton. People who think that they know what Weezer is because of Pinkerton are disappointed by most of the rest of their work. People who think they're just a pop band, whatever it is, because of this amazing vision of Rivers Cuomo, this constant need to reconfigure, to innovate, to change, to mold, makes it so that it's understandable that the people who love them intensely and deeply and are writing angry comments to my daughter right now saying, how dare you compare Rivers Cuomo to Olaf? Although I think he personally would find that funny. I don't know. Like you're there typing, and I understand, And then there's just a whole group of people who said they weren't what I thought they were. They weren't what I thought I was. And I really think that, part of the reason why I wanted to review this, even though I have not reviewed Spring or Summer, is just that we just need to appreciate their prolificness. How prolific Weezer is a gift. We are actually fortunate to be living in this time. And even if some of their projects don't hit the same way other projects do for you, they are cranking out multiple albums a year while having them be high quality, interesting things. And the thing about it, and this is what I've known about Rivers Cuomo forever and has been a line on him, is, it's sort of like he writes from the position of the brain and not the heart. Like, his albums are ideas, not feelings. And I think that might be part of the reason why people feel so betrayed. Because when you listen to some of his music, when I listened to Buddy Holly feeling like a dorky kid in high school, I felt like he was expressing how he felt and how I feel. And with these constant stylistic exercises, like Van Weezer is a great example. I reviewed that album. I liked it quite a bit. This kind of metal stylistic experiment coming within a year from OK Human. And I thought OK Human was this very personal work of art. And then all of a sudden we had this totally distanced, abstract, modern, postmodern mess of a commentary upon a failed genre and nostalgia. All these things all mixed up. Like, it makes sense because you want to emotionally invest in music. And I think it's the strength and the weakness of Weezer that he never stops winking. Like, he's never he will never just make OK Human, which is a good enough album that if Weezer makes one album as good as OK Human and doesn't release anything for 4 years, that's fine. That album is a masterpiece. Just track after track after track. Perfect. It's like a perfect album. It's such a good album. One of the best albums of this decade. But within a year, he's like making Van Weezer and doing all these season stuff, and he's constantly kind of winking. And whatever kind of attachment you wanted to have to OK Human, nope, I'm on to new ideas. So, how do you attach yourself to ideas? It's hard. It's hard to attach yourself to something so intellectual as opposed to something more emotional. That's part of the problem with any kind of music that is more analytical in that way. And so when he came out with Spring earlier in the year, And I was just like, nah. And it's not even that I hated it. I mean, I found the Vivaldi connection a little bit too forced. So if you don't know, Vivaldi has beautiful pieces of classical music, each for the seasons, and Weezer is imitating that by releasing one album for each season. And, the first song off of Spring quotes the most famous section of Spring. And it was just a little too cute, but really what it was is I was just tired. Like, I had Weezer fatigue. I had fatizer. Fatizer? Is this a thing? Weezer fans? If you're out there, are you out there? Weezer fans? Still mad about the Olaf thing? It's okay. If you're out there, is there such a thing as Weezer fatigue? Like, where you just get fatigued of Weezer even though you love them and they're your favorite band? The only band I can really compare them to is the Griselda Hip Hop Collective out of Buffalo. They release albums what seems like every month, and even when you love them, there comes a certain point where you're just sort of like, okay. But definitely going from OK Human to Van Weezer, and then to this, like, it's very clear we're totally in the thinky zone. That, like, oh, what if we did EPs of each season? So I just fell off. I just didn't feel like doing it. That was it. I just didn't feel like it. I didn't even listen to Summer. I didn't even press play. And it's not out of hate. It's out of Weezer fatigue. So what I did was I pressed play on Autumn. And of course, it's great. It's great. This guy writes really good songs. And despite the fact that he's always winking at you, I still emotionally connect to the songs. Now, it's weird because I sort of feel manipulated. Because I sort of feel like he knows how to write songs for how other people feel. There's something almost sociopathic about Weezer, right? Where it's like somebody who's analyzing styles and analyzing pop and analyzing emotions. And, this is how to make this emotion. But he still does it. And the ability to do it is impressive. I did spend a little bit of time this time on Weezerpedia, which is a great resource if you've never looked at it. I want to personally congratulate the Weezer community for having a page that gives you enough information and not too much. It's a very good resource. And apparently the entire idea behind this album is he wanted to make music that was similar to The Strokes and Franz Ferdinand. So I was like, okay. I remember that time. I remember when Strokes and Franz Ferdinand came out and they released this rock music that was pop music but was actually secretly basically disco because all the drums were four on the floor, and so they had that kind of poppy disco feel while also being like, rock is not dead, look, they've got long hair and are jerks in interviews, hooray, right? So already, ideas and not feelings. This is an interesting idea. That's an interesting soundscape to be in. Much more interesting to me than, oh, how can I sound like Van Halen? How can I sound like the Strokes, the early aughts disco rock movement? It's interesting. The other idea, obviously, is about the seasons. And I will say one of my favorite things about this album is that it doesn't go super hard on that. There's, track 1 is in Pumpkin Spice Latte, and then, track 2 is The Smell of Cinnamon, and track 3 is going to Michael's to buy a plastic skull, right? Like none of it's like that. It's pretty subtle. The thing I would say this album has a feel thematically, there's a lot of pain. There's a lot of pain, a fair amount of superstition. There's a lot of religiosity. I don't edit my videos, so religiosity is going to stay in there. Religiosity. A sort of level of superstition. There's some mentions of witchcraft. The whole thing feels fall to me in the way, my brother used to live right next to Salem, Massachusetts. And, like Salem, Massachusetts in the fall has a certain vibe, and obviously the history of the witch trials. This album does successfully make you feel Halloween-y, but not in the way of like trick or treat or whatever, getting dressed up. More like a kind of New Englandish, witch trial-y, voice of the pious, self-hating pilgrims. I'm throwing out a lot of words here. And I think if you listen to this album a lot, you hear what I'm saying. Like, I think if you listen to this album and then, you watch that horror movie, that black and white horror movie, what was it called? The Witch? That terrible one where the baby got stolen? Ugh. That kind of autumn feel. So, Let's go through the album. I'm going to start off with my stamp, my example song, whenever possible. It's great when the first song is my stamp, and that is here. Just click above the Weezer Wookiees. Can't Dance, Don't Ask Me, if you want to hear the song. It does everything that this album does. It starts off with this kind of harpsichord sound, which kind of pisses me off because, Vivaldi is all about strings. So if you're going to be referencing Vivaldi, just put strings up front, not harpsichord. But that's okay. It's not like you never used harpsichord. Very simple guitar, just Weezer guitar lines, just Weezer, Weezer, Weezery. He does a lot of like interpolations and quotings of other things in this album and just in general. And here he says, Doctor, Doctor, give me the news or let me know I've got a bad case of not loving me. And it's at this point I want to let you know the tragedy of Robert Palmer's passing. So Robert Palmer was a pop singer from the 80s who sang songs like Simply Irresistible, Addicted to Love, and Doctor, Doctor, Give Me the News, I Got a Bad Case of Loving You, all over MTV. Not good, not particularly good. When he died, about 10 years ago, everyone went, oh no, he did? Oh, that's so terrible that Robert Palmer died. I love Led Zeppelin. He seemed like such a kind person, too. Oh, not Robert Plant? Robert Palmer? Oh, yeah, that's a bummer. This is universal. It was very funny. Anyways, that has nothing to do with this album, but that was just a very unfortunate thing. I felt bad for Robert Palmer because he wasn't properly mourned because everyone was just so happy that Robert Plant wasn't dead. But so it's an interesting interpolation of an 80s song. Again, very kind of this disco sound that he's trying to go for. When I say disco, I mean there was a moment in indie rock at the turn of the century where indie rock used 4-on-the-floor bass, meaning 1, 2, 3, 4, and created a lot of songs that felt like they could be disco songs where they had different instrumentation. All right. So, like this is a good example on the chorus where it has a very kind of plodding thing, but there's an interesting rhythm bit here where the hi-hat's being hit on the 2 and the 4. Whole thing has almost like an oompa feel to it. And then just this beautiful chorus. This is what I'm talking about. Like, damn it, Rivers Cuomo, do you mean anything? I asked it in the Van Weezer review. Does Rivers Cuomo even exist? Is he just Patrick Bateman, like the pop star? Because this is such a great anthem for introverts who feel that they're missing out on the world. I don't know if that's what his life is like. I don't know anything about him, really. I really don't, except what I hear in his music. I don't read his biography. I don't follow him on Twitter or whatever. So this idea, I wish I was doing what someone else is doing. Hey, this is beautiful. I mean, I think a lot about FOMO, fear of missing out. I see how social media impacts my children and their obsession with wanting to not miss out things and do the best thing always possible. And I do think that technology is making this worse. Like when I was in high school, I was probably playing Mortal Kombat 2 while listening to the Blue Album on repeat until I got so mad that it got overplayed that I forbid anyone from playing it. That's probably what I was doing. And I might have had other friends who were across town doing something else, but I didn't know. But then it goes further. So really what this is about the fear of missing out, but when you're an introvert, when you can't relate to other people. But I can't dance, don't ask me. So he's someone who wants to participate in society, wants to participate in the fun, but he literally can't. So, I relate to that. Like the second verse, I don't have the huevos to knock on the door. Like someone who's just afraid to reach out to people, to connect with them. I want to do what everyone else is doing, but I can't dance. Don't ask me. Hey, this is a little throwaway EP by a band that releases 8 albums a week. But don't tell anybody. That's some of the best lyrics of the year. Those are some of the best lyrics I've ever heard. That's how good, that's as good as lyrics get. I want to be doing what everyone else is doing, but I can't dance, so don't ask me. If you know, that's my Morrissey wall. That's my Smiths wall over there. That's the promo posters of every single Smiths album and single. And these are great Morrissey lyrics. It just happens to be sung by Rivers Cuomo. Then the bridge has this really cool part where these words get kind of cut out. Kind of almost sounds like No Doubt. I don't know if this is intentional, but it seems to me like he's kind of shifting around these kind of early aughts influences and then just keeps repeating the chorus. And then the keyboards are in my head. I'm like, what are these keyboards like? And I realized, and I don't know if this is well known, but I think the only real parallel to Weezer are the Cars. I think the only band that really ever sort of does that winking pop rock mastery are the Cars. And so definitely the keyboard sound on here reminds me a lot of the Cars. It doesn't sound to me like he's trying to sound like Franz Ferdinand. It sounds to me like he's trying to sound like, at least as far as I can tell, his spiritual forefathers. And if you're out there and you don't own the Cars' first album, you have a terrible record collection. Just you have to buy that album, listen to it, and weep. Every single song is perfectly constructed and put together. It really is like it's a lot like the first Weezer album, where you're just like, Jesus Christ, it's perfect. It's just they did it. Just whatever it is that a rock and roll outfit wants to do by making an album that's popular and accessible and emotionally, bam, all there. And then it does a cute thing at the end where the bass line finishes off the melody. So the reason I picked this song is, it's just a straightforward, interesting song. It has that great emotion. It's hard to tell if that's where it's from. It has this great throwback feeling. Let's go through the rest of the album a little bit quicker. Probably my second favorite song on the album is Get Off on the Pain. Just great. Talks again about like witchcraft. Has these kind of chugging guitars, maybe a little left over from Van Weezer. And then just this full Weezer chorus. But just beautiful. Again, just these lyrics. But I get off on the pain. I get off on the pain. So catchy. And again, okay. Weezer releases 11 albums every 3 minutes. I get it. But this is as good of a melody, as catchy of a melody as Weezer can write. And Weezer can write some of the best melodies. That's why I'm really happy that I took time. And tell me in the comments, by the way, like how much did I miss by skipping over summer and spring? Because like this melody is insane. It's so good. It's such an earworm. In a better world, I think Weezer would have a lot more top 40 hits. Like I think someone would figure out how to market them better, because this could just be everywhere. And then a cool kind of post-chorus talking about God have mercy, part of this real like religious thing, sort of religious tension. Yep. I'm going to go on a tangent. Smash the like bucket. Okay? Please? I always forget to say it. It's important to me that people like my videos and that they tell me that they like them. Or smash the dislike. That's also okay. It's important I know that too. Please leave a comment if you have anything about Weezer you want to say, or anything about me. Or if you're like, what the hell's up with that painting? I'll tell you what's up if you ask me in the comments. And subscribe. So, tangent here. The fall is a period of inherent religious tension in America. And you can tell because, it's a funny thing, because in the entire Catholic world, and America's not a part of the Catholic world, we have a Catholic minority here. In the entire Catholic world, November 1st, All Saints' Day, is a holiday. And in America, we have Halloween. And basically, we need a day off after Halloween. Either we're eating too much candy or we're drinking too much alcohol. But like, of all the days that we need off, only New Year's Day is equivalent to the kinds of days we need off. So it's really funny that we celebrate a pagan holiday and then we don't celebrate a religious holiday the next day. And if we did celebrate the religious holiday the next day, it would actually make it easier for us to better enjoy the pagan holiday of Halloween. So there's a kind of tension there. And just the fact that we celebrate Halloween itself, it is inherently tied to witchcraft and anti-Christian things. And, we're a very, 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 very Christian country. So I think that might be why. I think that's why Rivers Cuomo is talking about it. I think he's bringing up a lot of the Bible, and he later talks about God and the Old Testament, and then he's talking about witches, and he's going to be talking about crows, he's going to be talking about a lot of this kind of confusing imagery that we have in living in a very Christian country that for one season goes all out for a pagan holiday. Samhain, as Danzig would call it. I don't know how you pronounce that. And then we get to this bridge, these like video game keyboards, and then he quotes / completely rips off Thomas Hardy, the poet. The poem is called I Look Into My Glass, and I want to thank timofdawn.wordpress.com and Olivia de Guardamar, who is providing this quote about this poem, because this really helps to understand what's going on here. He says that the poem by Thomas Hardy revolves around the impact of the time on the human identity. The main theme is the contrast between his aging physical body and his heart, which is still young and vibrant. Hey, you love Weezer. Weezer is a perpetual midlife crisis band. All right, I think starting with Pinkerton, okay, when he was still a young man, he lost his mind and ran off to Harvard and robbed piano teachers. They constantly, what do I do with my genius? What do I do with my art? What do I do with my life? And now he's getting older and older and older, and it's not like he's making less and less. He's making more and more and more. His heart, his spirit, his creativity is still young and vibrant, but his body is changing. And I can tell you, I turned 45, I don't even like looking at my old videos from 4 years ago because I'm like, God damn, I look so much younger back then. It just happens. I feel just as vim and vigorous as I did then, but I have that. So it makes sense here that this is in because I think there's a wisdom in Rivers Cuomo, the way he talks about age and the way he seems to be struggling with age while at the same time carefree with it. He seems to be constantly trying to stay young while also just sort of throwing in the towel and saying, I'm an old dude. I look into my glass and view my wasting skin and say, would God it came to pass, my heart had shrunk as thin. For then I, undistressed, by hearts grown cold to me, could lonely wait my endless rest with equanimity. Now, at this point in the song, it keeps going. He brings back the chorus. But here's the final verse of the original poem. But time, to make me grieve, part steals, lets part abide, and shakes this fragile frame at eve with throbbings of noontide. So there's that whole poem, the whole idea of just sort of wishing, wishing that your heart was in line with your body, that you fell apart emotionally as much as you fell apart physically. And then just more chorus, beautiful kind of feedback in the guitar. Great song. Next song, What Happens After You, is a bad song. This is bad music. And there's someone to blame. There are two people, two music producers, who I think just bring shame on music. Just have done nothing good. One of them is Jeff Lynne. Okay, some yellow is fine. But Jeff Lynne as a producer is an evil black hand of death who destroys and flattens everything he sees. Somebody so bad that he got George Harrison, Bob Dylan, and Tom Petty and Roy Orbison together and helped them make a piece of garbage album. Someone so bad that when Paul McCartney and John Lennon got back together again, he ruined their music posthumously. Now, I don't have the same anger at Desmond Child as I do at Jeff Lynne, but Desmond Child is an interesting case because, like it or not, Aerosmith is a great band, especially Aerosmith from 1973 to 1978. Every single one of their albums is great. And the return of Aerosmith was good too. Pump is a great album. Pump is a truly great album filled with hits. But there was a song on there, Tell Me What It Takes to Let You Go. I don't even know the name of the song. Which is a pretty good song, but it was one of these power ballads, and it was co-written by Desmond Child. And eventually, Desmond Child was this guy who was pushing this kind of power ballad stuff on Aerosmith. And that song did well. And it told Aerosmith, stop making Love in the Elevator and just keep making I Don't Want to Miss a Thing type songs. And co-write them with Desmond Child. So Desmond Child co-wrote this, and his stink is all over. This 80s synthesizer. It's a fine 4-on-the-floor groove, that kind of disco thing. I like his fragile voice, but these ooh-hoo, ooh-hoo. It's Maroon 5. I mean, it's Maroon 5 if Maroon 5 was, worse. It's just not a good song. Yikes. Yikes. And the crazy thing about why this song's so bad is that the next song, Francesca, actually does a lot of the same things that what happens after you does. There's still a lot of oohs and a lot of kind of pop sensibility, but somehow Francesca doesn't suck. Francesca's a fine song. It's not one of my favorites, but it's fine. It's like the good version of what happens after you. Francesco's cool because it starts off with this kind of like, almost sounds like he's recording a voice memo on guitar, kind of grungy. You are my Waterloo, hoo hoo hoo. Again, just less annoying. The verse here reminds me strongly of Julian Casablancas and the way he sings with the Strokes. Kind of a grating chorus, but it's fine. There's this great bit with this guitar section with all these layers and layers and this nice kind of like 80s style melody. Now, the idea behind this song apparently is that it's actually supposed to be a letter from Napoleon to Josephine. And if you know anything about the relationship between Napoleon and Josephine, it wasn't a happy marriage. There's a lot of different ways people have interpreted their relationship. The one that I find the most interesting, at least artistically, and I think is the most accurate, is she kind of played him. It was kind of cat and mouse. Like, she was kind of haughty and distant, and he was constantly fighting for her approval. So it kind of makes sense as this letter, like, Francesca, I need you, you are my Waterloo. Just the devil and a whore, c'est fou, quoting French, it is crazy. But this goes back to that whole idea. Like, when I was in a band for 6 years before I went off to college, or like halfway through college. And like, I would write songs, but I always had this problem where like I wrote songs about ideas. Like, I saw a painting and I wrote a song about the painting. Saint Nicholas of Tolentino saves a vessel from shipwreck. That's a song that I wrote because I saw a painting and I liked it. And like, I remember the co-writer of my band, who's a much better musician, artist, and everything. He was just like, Sky, like, stop like writing songs from the position of a character from Anna Karenina. Like, this feels abstract. This doesn't feel emotionally true. And that's kind of where we are here. Should she stay or should she go? Opens up with kind of like a weird video game sound again, and then people talking about the Old Testament. And it seems to be about Adam and Eve. And again, we're quoting a song from the 80s, Should I Stay or Should I Go? Part of the Clash becoming whatever the Clash became with the album Combat Rock, when Mick Jones kind of took over the artistic direction of Clash, probably for worse. Although Bad 2 is great, BAD 2 is great. But it's interesting, because it seems to be, so it's this kind of like a shuffle. It's like a 50s style shuffle, but it sounds like a 2020s imitation of an 80s imitation of a 50s song. Like a kind of 80s saxophone that fades out, this weird kind of double nostalgia. And it seems as though this is all about, tell me, God, how should I handle this? Should she stay or should she go? She is all I know. I can't let her go. She's the queen of the earth and I'm her king. But lately we've been fighting about everything. I could kick her ass out, move on with my life, or I could follow her into the night. So it seems to be a sort of simultaneous biblical story about Adam literally asking God, should he kick out Eve? And it also appears to be someone who's trying to figure out if he should leave his girlfriend. But it's fascinating because should she leave or should she go? Like, that's actually putting all the agency on her, right? She's the one who's leaving and she's the one who's staying. So it's not should I kick her out or should I let her stay? It's should she stay or should she go? So it's actually a confusing song in that way. Because rarely do you have a song about breaking up with someone and then give them the agency, let them be the subject of the sentence. Language professor here. What can I say? Also, you can buy my mug on spring.com. I don't care. Next song is called Taste Like Pain. What? Hey, what's going on here? I thought we were doing a Strokes thing, no? Avant-garde, bizarro orchestra. All sorts of like weird compressed drums and harpsichord and mad piano work. Okay. I hate me, I'm a loser, I'm a dumb cough. Lots of self-hate. That's another theme throughout this album that we hear a lot. A lot of sort of self-hate. Interestingly, there's an interpolation of Vivaldi, but it's from Winter. So it does seem like, I like that actually. It's my favorite thing here, because it would have been too cute if he took something from Autumn. It's okay. It's his album. It's not Vivaldi. He's not actually trying to redo Vivaldi. He's just finding some kind of structure method to release these songs. And it's just a really, really great song. It's fun hearing him get more stylistically ambitious. It's fun hearing the production get more stylistically ambitious. Apparently, according to Weezerpedia, the idea is this torture Like he read about torture on Wikipedia, and so this is like that. So again, it's this weird thing where I can sort of relate to it as feeling a lot of self-hatred throughout my life, but then at the same time, maybe not. Maybe it's just this guy's, he's doing what I did when I looked at the painting of St. Nicholas of Tolentino saving a vessel from shipwreck. Maybe he's sitting there and he's just thinking, what if I wrote a song about someone who's being tortured? Parenting story. I was in Belgrade with my kids and my wife, and my daughter, who was kind of going through her goth phase, wanted to go into the Museum of Torture. And I was like, there's no way I'm going. I don't want to see that. It's too real. I don't want to connect to humans. And so then she asked my wife. My wife's like, no way. And my son was like, there were all these tanks out front. He was looking at the tanks. And she's like, can I go on my own? So parenting, I go, sure. Bought her the ticket. Said, enjoy. I just want you to know you're probably not going to enjoy it. It's probably going to be very upsetting, and you're going to realize that torture is not cool. And she's like, okay. And she's trying to be all edgy. She walked in, she lasted about 20 seconds, and then came out basically screaming. and that cured her. Go find out for yourself that museums of torture are not fun. Museums of death are not fun. And it was good. It was scary because I was kind of afraid she was going to go in there and be like, it was awesome. But she had the proper human reaction, which is, I don't want to see that. I don't want to think about that. There's a parenting tip for y'all. Final track, Run, Raven, Run. Bet you didn't think I had a prop. I did. This is, again, this is where you really hear the strokes, the guitar work on this. Feels very, so apparently Rivers Cuomo, when he gets in this idea of doing stylistic exercises, he drills in on one musician and tries to figure out how do they do what they do. The guitar here and the chugging instruments underneath and the lead guitar, all of it sounds very, very strokesy, except there's this really beautiful harmony in the voice. And then this song just gets so epic. And there's time changes and it's kind of poppy, but still a little bit avant-garde. It falls a little bit from that Taste Like Pain area. Great kind of solo at the end, and then at the end you keep thinking it's going to end, and there's all these new parts. At the end there's this music box where he's singing in falsetto. Apparently he had COVID, and he says, I can hear the eagle screams. So apparently this whole album is sort of about the idea of heading into winter, and the idea of a raven having to run. And it made me think of something, and this may not be your experience. It was my experience. Halloween 2020, COVID Halloween. That was a nadir. That was a low point. I mean, it wasn't the low point, because obviously low points is just people dying and our government's catastrophic insistence on small business over human life. Catastrophic and ineffective prioritization of small business over human life. I remember, because my kids love Halloween. I love Halloween. And my wife was correct. And she's like, we shouldn't play it up. We don't want to think about Halloween until October 25th. We're usually the family, that has all the stuff up and the skeletons and the pumpkins and all that. But the reason why was because we were having a long winter. There was no vaccine on the horizon. There was no going outside on the horizon. We were still wiping down our trash bag, our grocery bags that we got from Instacart. You know what I mean? We were wiping down, we were using Clorox wipes on cardboard bags, on paper bags. That was the state that we were in. And we didn't know if there was going to be food shortages. We didn't know what we were going to go through. So it should have been this little bright spot, but there's no trick-or-treating. It was this. The problem with autumn, the difficulty with fall, is that sense that it's the coming darkness. And so when you start from a position of we've been inside the house and can't go outside and we're terrified and we're doing Zoom, for Christ's sake, for all of our classes, and then on top of that you have this Halloween and the themes of skeletons and death when hundreds of thousands of people are dying, this song, intentionally or unintentionally, serves for me as a reflection of Halloween 2020. Rivers Cuomo is quoted, again in Weezerpedia, well, it's the very end of the album, and we're heading into the land of sadness, and it's the culmination of the fear, terror, and anxiety and the loss we're about to confront. This song made me cry. And that's what it is. I really think this isn't, I don't know if this is on purpose either, but ravens, like crows, are part of the corvid family. Corvid and COVID are fairly similar words. I don't know. That could just be word association on my part. And then there's just middle sections. I've already talked about the end, but I just want to talk about the middle section with just some of these great lyrics. It's tearing me apart, leaves me in a daze. I'm your spirit animal, and I'm going cannibal. There's only you. Just like this real theme of like desperation and loss and the need to flee and the coming darkness. It is all there with this beautiful soundscape. That right after this, there's a guitar solo that gets doubled, and there's basses and synthesizers, and there's this kind of change, a time signature that leads into that whole end part, which I already described, until eventually we just hear bells and crows as the winter comes. It's a good album. Thank you, Weezer. Thank you, Rivers Cuomo, for making such an interesting thing for me to think about here. These are my Patreons. You can also join my Patreons if you want. Right down there is someone new there, Misanthropy and Defatigably. I had a hard time writing your name out. KB Bynum had a much easier job with you. So you can join. I use this money to buy albums, so I bought OK Human. I usually would have it and I would show it to you, but it's in my daughter's room. So before you get mad at my daughter for calling Rivers Cuomo Olaf, she's a big enough fan that she listens to Weezer on her own in her room. They aren't who I thought they were. All right, well, until next time, there's the camera.